everyone, and welcome to the Jacinda Show. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a great show today. Today we're going to be talking to a very special young lady. Her name is Michelle Moore. She has a story of triumph, a story of tragedy, and she's going to speak candidly to all of us today of how God restored her body and restored her broken spirit. So at this time, without further ado, I'm going to bring Michelle Moore on out to join us. How are you? I'm doing good, doing good. Thanks so much for stopping by and joining us. I'm just telling everyone that you have an amazing story of triumph, amazing story of tragedy, family secrets, the whole nine. And the most amazing thing is God brought you through. Absolutely. And you're here today, right?
Yes.
So let's start, from the beginning. You are a native of Detroit, Michigan.
Yes.
So how was that growing up?
Growing up in Detroit, Michigan was difficult. That's my hometown. I love it. I love it. I love it. I grew up in a family of 8.
8, okay.
Yes, so I had a very big family.
Wow, yeah, big family.
And I'm the oldest girl too. So.
Oh my goodness.
So it's 4 girls and 4 boys.
A lot of responsibility.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just being in a family, a big family, and coming from my mother's family also being very big, it's a lot of responsibilities on my mother as well. So just being young and just taking on everything at the age of 8 years old was difficult at the time.
And you talk a lot about your grandmother. I think you all lived in close proximity of each other.
Yes.
I think in chapter 1 you talk about your grandmother. You talk about how she was hard on you.
Yes, she was.
Tell me about that.
My grandmother was very hard on me. I was actually cleaning up a 5-bedroom house at the age of 5 years old.
Wow.
5 bedrooms. So, and I was doing the washing on the boards. I don't know if you are aware of the steel boards. You got the watch.
I'm not familiar with it, but I've heard of it. Wow.
Yes, yes. And I think it was because her mother was hard on her, so therefore she was hard on me. And I was the oldest grandchild too. Well, not the oldest, but the girl.
Right, because you're oldest of your intermediate family.
Correct, correct. And I think it was because of that. I think it was because of some things that she grew up in. She wanted to kind of keep that going.
Because you talk about, for the most part, it was a pretty decent childhood, especially when your cousins would come around, when you talked about your cousins, and when you would go to school. But I remember reading in the book where you said you hate to take naps. You didn't like taking naps in school. I think it was kindergarten or first grade. I'm not sure what grade that was. But I remember you saying that. You said when you would take a nap, that's when you would think about your life, and it wasn't a good feeling.
No, it wasn't, and the reason why is because I was sexually abused by my father. And it started when I was 5 years old. So therefore, when I went to sleep, all I could think about was the abuse.
We'll bring back that trigger that thought. Okay.
Absolutely.
Is that when it would take place at night?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
And was your mother present at that time?
No, she wasn't. My mother at the time was going to school. She was going to cosmetology school.
Oh, so she was in school. Okay.
Yes, she was. She was in school, and my father used to watch us all the time. And my grandmother, she would watch us occasionally, but my father would watch us.
Yeah, because you talk about how you kind of moved, in with your grandparents, and then I think you guys found your own place, so you kind of went back and forth. So it was when you were living in your home, is when would it ever take place in your grandparents' home?
No, not at all, not at all. And the reason why is because my father was always there at home, and at the time I couldn't understand why my father was verbally abusive towards my mother. It really, I couldn't do the connection at 5 years old, but it was because he was on drugs, and it was because he was alcoholic.
You talk a whole lot about the arguing in your parents' home. You talk about the arguing, and it was constant, like every day, to the point where, I don't know, I think you said you would cry yourself to sleep, where you and your brother would just sit and just listen and just hope for it to stop.
Yes, my parents argued all the time, and it was because my father used to steal from my mother all the time. And my mother, by her going to cosmetology school and being one of the assistants, state assistants, we didn't have much money. So therefore, she was upset and hurt because he used the money for drugs.
And you all never could understand why they just could, because you didn't know why they were arguing. I think you would just hear them argue and shout, and then I think I remember you reading where then your father would just leave, and you wouldn't see him for maybe a couple of days. Describe that to us.
He would just leave because my mother would kick him out. And he would be gone for like a couple of days to weeks at a time, and then he would eventually come back. And I couldn't understand what was going on because it always happened so much. So it was almost like it was a part of like, this is how it was supposed to be when I was growing up.
And talk about some of the happiest. I mean, there's one part of the book I read I thought was funny. I think your father had brought home an animal. And I think, was it a turtle? It was a turtle, right? And you were so happy. It's like when I was reading the book, that's one thing about the book, it's very descriptive.
Correct.
To the point where you can actually see in your imagination everything taking place as it was taking place. And I really enjoyed that about the book. But talk about that incident when you brought that home.
He was in the streets doing his thing.
Okay.
He said he found a turtle in the alley and it was raining.
I think that's when they come out, right?
And he brought it home and I was like, wow, we have a turtle, we have a turtle. So I ran to the bathroom and put some water in the bathtub so the turtle can live.
You're right.
Because you're 5 years old, you're like, okay, they live in water. So
very smart for a 5-year-old though.
So I put it in the water, and my brother and I, we were just like, oh wow, we have a turtle, and I couldn't wait to go to school to tell everybody we had a turtle. It was a happy moment.
It seems like your happy moments were quickly followed by unhappy moments. I remember you saying you went to school and told everybody about the turtle, and they wanted to come see it.
Yeah.
But you said,
no. It's like, how could you tell people that I don't want you to come over because my family, they argue. I don't know if they're going to argue today, which is so embarrassing. Kids going to talk about you. And I wanted them to come, but that other side was like, no, I can't have them come to my house.
It's tough. It's tough. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the abuse as it continued. It didn't stop at 5 years old.
No.
It actually continued and with other abusers.
Absolutely.
So we'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us.
Well, the night that it started, I was asleep, and my brother wasn't there. My brother was at my grandmother's house. And so I could hear everything in the house, so I heard some footsteps coming. And as I heard the footsteps coming until towards my room, the door opened. And as the door opened, there was my father.
Tuning in, we're talking to Michelle Moore, and we're talking about her incredible story of triumph and how she was abused, starting at the age of 5 years old. We're going to just go back right into the interview. When you talk about your abuse when you were 5 years old, that's when it started. Let's talk about that night when it first happened, because that's actually where the title of your book derived from. So talk about that night.
Well, the night that it started, I was asleep. And my brother wasn't there. My brother was at my grandmother's house. And so I could hear everything in the house. So I heard some footsteps coming. And as I heard the footsteps coming until towards my room, the door opened. And as the door opened, there was my father. And at that time, he put his hands on my mouth and told me to shh, don't tell. And so I couldn't understand why my father was doing this. It was like a burning sensation inside of me.
You said the inside of your body burned.
Right. It burned so bad, I just couldn't understand it. You know, I'm like, is this right? Is it wrong? And he never said a word. He did it. I couldn't even tell you how long it was because it seemed like it was so long in my mind, but it might have been a couple of minutes or so. And he did it, and once he did it, he just left and never said a word.